It's just, when I heard you on the TV this morning, I decided to check the Florida statute. So I don't know what the Florida provision is. It's just that it's habitual drunkard is one of their grounds that they list in their statute. I have to assume that all of these government employees perform their tasks.
Right. Well,
I know that mistakes are made.
That's a dangerous assumption.
As I said, I know mistakes are made. But then those are the anecdotal evidence that you've just heard presented to the panel.
Let me ask you a specific question. If you know the answer, you know the answer. If you don't. Does Florida, yes or no, does Florida have a character provision in their law?
I don't know.
Okay. If you take, for my next question, take my word for it, they don't have a character provision. Would you agree that the fact that we have a, and I understand you disagree with the fact that the character provision in Pennsylvania is not clearly defined as to what that means. But would you agree that if Pennsylvania has a character provision, which local law enforcement can rely on, and Florida does not, that's a significant difference in their two laws?
No.
You don't think that's significant?
No. In my experience, I've never seen a character and reputation denial upheld or a good cause denial upheld because the standard is so vague and amorphous. It amounts to a violation of due process. Now, I've heard of them being upheld, and in cases I wasn't involved in.
And you're familiar with case law in Pennsylvania. I mean, there's case law in Pennsylvania. Some of the for lack of a better word, landmark decisions. One of them here in Delaware County, where a guy was known as a result of a drug investigation. A guy down here in the city of Chester, maybe 10, 15 years ago, was known to law enforcement to be involved in the drug trade, but had never been indicted or convicted, but they had informants and police who knew who he was, knew who he associated with, to use that phrase, associated with, and that he was involved in a drug trade. He came to the Delaware County Sheriff, applied for a concealed permit. They denied it on the basis, and the issue that went up on appeal was whether or not you could rely on hearsay in denying an appeal. And the court said yes. The court upheld that decision, saying local law enforcement, based on information, you're familiar with that case, I assume, right?
Not that particular one, but I've heard of it.
Okay. It's not one that you cite a lot, I guess.
Well, actually, it's one that we discuss a lot.
Okay, but so that would be the fact that Florida doesn't have that. Florida law enforcement, or in this case, Florida's Bureau of Agriculture, can't rely on non-convictions. In other words, information from law enforcement about someone's character. That's a significant difference between their law and Pennsylvania. You agree with that?
Okay, the other side of the same coin, if I may answer you. If you would say somebody who associates with criminals shouldn't get a carry permit. Law enforcement associates with criminals. Criminal defense attorneys associate with criminals. Are these people supposed to not get carry permits?
Would you make that argument in court, Counselor?
I think I just did, John.
I mean, that's...
No, it's not. I mean, what the point of the argument is you're taking association. And you have a freedom of association. Would you say if a person's, you've got a big family, and one person in the family is a black sheep, and they have a criminal record, would you then say nobody else in the family is allowed to have guns? So because they associate with that family member?
But let me ask you, then I'll turn it over to the other members. Let me ask you just the ultimate question. You said that you wouldn't advise a client as a remedy for being denied to go to Florida. I mean, like, for instance, if I want to put a porch on my house, right, and I apply to the local zoning board, and they deny my zoning application to put a porch on the house, I don't go to Florida to get the zoning permit. So you wouldn't advise that as a legal way to get a permit if you've been denied or revoked in Pennsylvania, hey, go to Florida, right?
No.
That would not be your advice. So the question like
Nor would I tell them to go ahead and carry on their existing Florida permit, because in that situation,
yes,
where you talk about government employees not always doing the job properly,
yes,
if you have a denial here, you're supposed to revoke the out-of-state permit. But then if you have the famous case, and it happened up in the Poconos, the gentleman was 302'd and voluntarily committed twice. They never bothered to revoke his carry permit. They were supposed to, never did, because somebody didn't put in the notice requirements, although the statute calls for it. Well, as we said, people who have certain job duties don't always perform their job the way they're supposed to. Maybe it gets left it open.
You and I are starting to agree on some things. So let me ask this last question, and then I'll let my colleagues ask you some questions. So if we can agree that the remedy for being denied locally is not to go to another state, but from your viewpoint is to improve the local process. What are the top? I'm gonna limit here. Give me the top 3 things you would do to improve the local permitting process.
I do
so
not
that people would
practice
not have
law
to,
in Florida, so I wouldn't tell them what, I wouldn't
I'm talking
presume to
about
tell them what to
Pennsylvania.
do in Florida.
I'm talking about
I
Pennsylvania.
only can offer them help to address the revocation or denial here in Pennsylvania.
I'm asking you about Pennsylvania. In other words, people are going to come here today and say that we go to Florida because the PA system is too tough or